You are listening to yet another Clarkesworld podcast. Welcome to the fifth story for April 2026, issue 235. My name is Kate Baker, and I'm your host and narrator. And these stories, along with all of our past stories, and hopefully all of our future ones, are brought to you by your ongoing support of the magazine. So whether you have chucked a few bucks our way via a donation, gone to patreon.com/Clarkesworld, or bought a subscription, thank you so much. We know times are tight, so anything that you can give is so appreciated. Our story is titled Shelter and is by Nadia W. Aldsen. Nadia W. Aldsen is a writer and Clarion alumna based in Berlin. She lives, loves, reads, writes, and teaches in both English and German. At full moon, she transforms into an academic. Sometimes it's the other way around. This is her first science fiction publication in English. So, my dear listener, I hope that you can sit back, relax, and let me tell you a story. Employment Agreement. Name of employer: Chaska Punku, Spaceport Administrative Authority, CPSPAA, based in Chaska Punku, Chile. Acting in lieu of the European Space Agency, ESA, based in Paris, France. Name of employee: XXX, Social Work Specialist. Duration of employment: 5 Earth solar years. Objectives: 1. To support and advance the European Interstellar Hospitality Initiative by providing comprehensive social services to incoming extraterrestrial travelers in need. 2. To demonstrate the European Union's commitment to democracy, peace, and interspecies communication. You're welcome here. Come on in, I said, as I did to every weary traveler, the tired, the confused, the lost, the broke, and the broken. Anyone stranded at Chaska Punku Spaceport was far from home and usually in bad shape. This one was stalling on the threshold, not yet ready to step inside. I'd seen it before, a slight hesitation, a moment of embarrassment. I'm not sure this place is right, her handheld translated. Feel invited. I tried to sound warm and reassuring while fighting the fatigue that came with repetition. I shivered in the Atacama desert chill that seeped in. Through the open door, I could see some of the low sandstone buildings that housed living quarters and offices for the small spaceport crew. She leaned her flat, bony head against the doorframe, supporting herself with a palm on the wall. The stones were unevenly cut. The surface had the dull ochre of dried clay. Sandstone. Her handheld said as she made a trickling sound and moved her claw along the roughly hewn wall. As she edged in, the door closed behind her, chiming the bell. Startled by the sound, she flung her head around. Then she turned toward me, still reluctant, pulling her coat tight around her small, saurian frame. I had never encountered a Yurii before. Her speech had hisses and trickles and trills and some screeches. Can I really use this room as a house? Her handheld translated. Well, yes. You can stay here a couple of days until you're back on your feet. She looked at her feet, unsure of what to make of my offer. She made some hissing sounds and fumbled her words without the translation device. As a cell. She had a hard time with the vowels and her speech sounded slurred. Yes, this place is a shelter. Make yourself comfortable. I pointed to the shabby furniture that offered comfort to many different body shapes. I had never met someone like her before, so I didn't know what position she'd prefer to rest in. Things, she said with a strong hiss, swallowing the vowels. Would you like to ingest something warm? What are your nutrition requirements? Do you have any dietary restrictions? She shook her bony head, causing the wattles on her throat to wobble, and switched back to the handheld for translation. No, thank you. I just need some water and shelter. Oh, and Minerals. Her scales were chipped, a dull gray, and she smelled musty. I wondered if she needed medical attention. I'll see what I can do for you. Make yourself at home? I tried to sound cheerful, but felt like a service bot going through the motions of hospitality without really believing it. I didn't feel at home here, so why should she? Clause 1. Duties of employee and scope of work. The employee shall provide psychosocial counseling and support to all extraterrestrial travelers in need to the best of their training, expertise, and ethical obligation. The employee will not be granted any peer consultation, supervision, or mental health support during work hours. Emotional exhaustion and burnout syndrome are not recognized as legitimate conditions within CPS PAA's occupational health framework. To give her some space, I boiled water in the kitchenette and reached for my favorite mug, the one with the faded peacock butterfly print. Then I quickly searched the database. Apparently, the Yurii could tolerate human food as long as it was plant-based. Minerals, she had said. I supposed powdered veggie broth would do. The label promised calcium, magnesium, potassium, and numerous trace minerals. I added a few spoonfuls to the hot water and stirred. The earthy smell of carrots and parsnips steaming up reminded me of home, and I felt a little pang. She was still standing close to the entrance when I offered her the mug. She cocked her head and stared at the butterfly. The eye spots on the butterfly's wings resembled her own eyes. Pale, golden irises with tear-shaped black pupils and shiny blue reflections. She reached for the mug but flinched back as soon as she touched it. She clasped her hand and stared at me with her butterfly eyes, round and unblinking. The mug was scalding, and I felt guilty for not checking what temperature would feel comfortable to her. I wished I had a better routine for interacting with rare visitors like her, or had gotten some training to speak of. I am so sorry. Let me get you some water or ice. Are you okay with ice? I have to drink this fluid cooler. It has to have more minerals, the translation device said. Clause 2. Professional development. The employee may pursue professional development opportunities to improve their service delivery. Professional development, for example, courses, conferences, and certifications, must be pre-approved by a review committee appointed by CPS-PAA. It requires unpaid leave and shall be funded entirely by the employee. Any qualifications obtained are considered CPS-PAA intellectual property and may not be listed on resumes. I returned to the kitchenette, poured half the broth into the sink, added a lot more powder, stirred, and filled the mug up with cold water. I wondered if her home planet had a butterfly analog. Wondered if we would find common ground for a meaningful exchange, or at least interesting small talk. When I turned back to my client, she was crouched on the floor. Are you all right? She grabbed the mug with both hands and took a big gulp, exposing the limp wattles on her throat. As she swallowed, she blinked slowly with her inner lids. It looked like she was finally relaxing. She put the mug down, shrugged off her coat, and flung it on a chair. Then she finished the broth. Suddenly, the mug slipped from her hand. With a sharp clank, it hit the floor, and the handle broke off. She collapsed, slumping on the floor. Before I could bend down to help, her body crumpled and shrank as if her bones were melting beneath her flesh. The musky smell became so pungent it made me gag. I stumbled back and pulled my shirt over my mouth. Her body's structural integrity gave way rapidly, leaving only a scaled, fleshy heap that started to froth and dissolve. The scales came apart as the tissue underneath liquefied. Within a couple of minutes, all that remained of her was a puddle and a pile of scales on the porous floor, amidst them the broken handle of the mug I'd brought from home. I just stood there, frozen by the familiar fatigue and numbness that came over me whenever there was nothing I could do to help. But this was even worse. I had just witnessed someone die right in front of me, and fast forward. Slowly, my brain started processing again. Did she have an infection? Could I catch some evil space bug? Oh, did she die from the burn she got when she touched the mug? Did I kill her with the veggie broth? Do I need to call a doctor, the police, a priest, a funeral home? Did I accidentally murder her? My brain switched to panic mode. Maybe not the police. Should I just sweep up the scales in the mug and throw them away, mop the floor and pretend nothing had happened? I didn't have the energy to deal with shit like that. Cleaning up and forgetting about it would probably save me a lot of trouble. Just as taking the fine print in my work contract more seriously would have. The contract had European-style benefits, but the CPSPAA added some specifics. Clause 3. Resignation and contract termination. The employee has the right to terminate this agreement with 3 months written notice. In the event of resignation prior to the completion of the 5-year term, the employee shall pay a severance deficit fee equivalent to 3 months' gross salary for every incomplete contract month, payable immediately upon notice submission. For a moment, just cleaning up seemed attractive. Then my professional ethics kicked in. Wasn't my work supposed to be about compassion? When I trained as a social worker, we often did an exercise where we walked in someone else's shoes. Metaphorically, since most species don't need shoes, except in space. All right. What would I hope for if I staggered into an alien shelter and died there for whatever reasons? I pictured some saurian person disposing of my body, treating it as trash, and realizing that I did care about basic dignity. A person had just died right in front of me, and it would be wrong to dispose of her. If she were even a she. I had just assumed her gender based on the voice coming out of the translator. I got some tweezers from the bathroom and fished the broken handle out of the pile. I should try gluing it back to the mug later. First, I should call Dr. John. He was assigned to the shelter to provide medical care. More often than not, his work involved supplying species-specific painkillers or sedatives until the clients could be shipped off to their respective consulates. I suppose Dr. John could also issue death certificates. The enlightening interspecies exchange I had envisioned earlier would definitely not happen with my most recent client. I felt bile rising up in my throat. I was the worst social worker ever. Dr. John's cheery optimism made me aggressive, probably because it reminded me of my own when I started the job. Maybe I was just jealous of his unwavering do-goodness. His still came across as heartfelt, while mine had faded into a fake version over the past 2 years. I also held a personal grudge against him because he served in the tight-fisted CPSPAA committee that decided the fate of the shelter and, well, me. When John saw the mess on the floor, he immediately asked, "Did you touch or move anything?" "No," I lied, thinking about the tweezers. I was glad to have resisted my impulse to sweep everything up. "Good. Very good." He was visibly relieved. "I checked the Yuri physiology on the way here. Is it contagious?" He hadn't brought any biohazard equipment. "No," he said, gazing around the room. "Sturdy stone walls." "Sandstone," I agreed. At this time of day, the walls looked like layered cake batter, discreetly colored with cinnamon, saffron, and cocoa, baked and petrified on top of each other. "Oh, that'll do," he mumbled while typing something into his handheld. Jean worked around the room with a 3D scanner and took pictures as if securing a crime scene. "This isn't a crime scene," I said lamely. "I didn't do anything to her. She came in and just dissolved." "Sure," John said, looking around the room as if scrutinizing it. "Still got to document this." "Since when?" I snapped. "Are you the police now? Should I call them? Will you?" "The police? No, I called the consulate in Santiago. They'll send someone, but it'll take a couple of hours. Just make sure no one touches this, at all." He patted me on the shoulder in that really condescending way I hated. "Well, this will be a true interspecies learning experience for you. Sometimes I wish I had your job." John breezed out the door, leaving me with a damp heap of scales. decaying fish. That's what it smelled like. It reminded me of my last vacation at the beach a couple of years before I started this job. Clause 4, annual leave. The employee is entitled to 30 days of vacation per solar year. The employee is solely responsible for recruiting, training, and financially compensating a temporary substitute. The substitute must be approved by CPSPAA's review committee. All payments to the appointed substitute will be deducted without delay or appeal from the employee's own salary. The employee is obliged to remain on call in case of client emergencies during their vacation time. The heap was really in the way. Anyone rushing into the shelter would step in it. Covering it with a sheet wouldn't work because that would definitely stick to the goo and shift the scales. I rummaged around and found a bright red plastic tub that seemed big enough. When I flipped the tub to put it over the pile, it slipped out of my hand. I caught it in midair just above the pile before it hit the ground. Startled, I set the tub aside, got on my knees, and examined the pile close up. Had I really caught it in time, or had it grazed the scales? Had they shifted visibly if someone compared them to Dr. Young's documentation? They didn't seem to be scattered, but wasn't there a slight dent in the pile? Maybe it had been there before. Maybe it hadn't. I flipped the plastic tub over the pile and puddle and taped its rim to the floor. Reeling, I waited for clients, for the Yuri, for the police, for anything to happen. I wondered if unattentive or drugged clients would still stumble over the tub. I wondered if it mattered since I already touched the pile. I got up again and taped a broomstick to the tub, the red bristles pointing upward like a flag. How much had I moved the scales? Would it cause diplomatic havoc? Should I leave while I still could? Instead, I washed the dishes. Some of the goo and a single scale stuck to the broken handle. It resembled a human fingernail, a grayish keratin oval that looked somewhat dead. One end was slightly frayed, and it felt brittle. I dabbed it with a dish towel, unsure what to do with it. I had just taped the tub over the pile, so I would have to peel the tape off to put it back. Carefully, I wrapped the scale in some tissue and slipped it into my pocket. After scrubbing the mug and the handle several times with dish soap and disinfectant, I hid them in the very back of the shelf. Then I shoved the veggie broth container next to them, just in case. I fervently hoped there wouldn't be a police investigation. The bell chimed. When I turned around, a Yuri stared at the arrangement with the plastic tub and broom. Her iridescent black scales had a golden tint. "Is this a human ritual?" she inquired through her translation device. "A human precautionary measure? Better safe than sorry. That's what you say, isn't it?" I nodded. Her translation device seemed to be more advanced. It could do idioms. "Ooh," she began, making a sound that rose and fell. Then she paused and looked at me. "Aren't you joining in?" I'm happy to. I didn't know I should." "Ooh," she started again. I joined in, producing off-key tones. Once my voice stopped quavering and created a steady, full-bodied like ooh with each breath. She changed her song into rasping and grating. I tried to join in again, but she motioned for me to continue with the ooh. She wriggled her scaly neck up and down, making the fleshy wattles on her throat dance and her scales glitter. Even though I was clearly the sidekick in some Yuri ritual, I had no idea what we were doing. I was transfixed by the snake-like movements of her throat. I knew I was being speciesist, but the way she swung her bony head on her long, scaly neck and flapped the swollen wattles as if they were prey about to be gobbled down created a hint of primal panic in my gut. More than a hint. I closed my eyes and tried to focus on my breathing with each ooh. It worked, sort of. When I opened my eyes again, the Yuri had crouched down, still singing. She carefully removed the duct tape with her claws and lifted the red tub off the puddle. When she fell silent, I did too. Are you sure the scales haven't been moved the slightest bit? Yes, I managed. Why? I must draw a divination from them. It's important for the continuation of the family line. Oh my. Had I just ruined a Yuri lineage with my favorite mug in a red plastic tub? Oh. Once again, I felt an overwhelming urge to leave. So, I said instead, trying to sound unsuspicious, what would have happened if I hadn't secured the scales and someone had walked into them? She moved her palms above the scales, making a scraping sound that translated to, Then she stared at me with her grainy golden irises. Between Yuri, a collision of fates emerge. She sniffed the air as if sensing something. At least, that's what our traditionalists believe. You're not a traditionalist? I consider myself a pragmatist. I solve problems. What kind of problems? The ones Yuri encounter here on Earth. She gestured at the puddle on the floor. May I ask what happened? She seemed quite unwell before she died. Well, she's not dead, is she? I was at a loss. In my panic, I hadn't thought to research Yuri beliefs about death. Was reincarnation on the plate? There's not much left of her physically, I offered. Are you taking care of her remains? Should I contact a funeral home? As I said, she isn't dead. On the contrary, she is growing. Spiritually? No, physically. She pointed to the ochre floor, walls, and ceilings. The colors had shifted with the warm afternoon light. Sunny yellows mingled with oranges and patches of dusty rose. Here and there, iron veins streaked through the layered stone. Sandstone is not ideal, but it is big enough in here. It's dry and warm, and there's running water. Sorry, I don't understand what you're saying. She inoculated the building. It will serve her well for her transfiguration. Her what? Usually we choose rocks, hills, mountains, caves, that sort of thing. She tapped on the ancient blocks of sandstone. Are you saying she vaccinated the building? Why? No, it's more like what your Lepidoptera do. And what's that? Shouldn't you know the basics about the fauna of your planet? The Yuri unfolded a device and began to span a translucent hemisphere of the pile. Wow, that was rude. Lepidoptera? I resolved to look it up later. Okay, I said. Well, when you've secured the pile, her remains, can I reopen the shelter? I was pretty sure that for every hour the shelter was closed, my salary would be reduced. Clause 5, working hours and flexibility. The employee's schedule shall reflect a standard 40-hour work week with flexible arrangements to accommodate extraterrestrial clients' needs. Due to a broad variety of extraterrestrial time cycles, standard working hours may expand up to 84 hours per week. Flexible arrangements refer to the employee's obligation to adjust their schedule immediately, without notice. The hemisphere looked like a giant bell jar. The Yuri patted it to test its sturdiness. It didn't bulge. You can't reopen. She is not to be disturbed, except for visits by her extended family, of course. Some will want to experience the divination in its original state. She banged against the hemisphere with her knuckles. It sounded like a soft gong. But the shelter? Our consulates already contacted the ISA, the CPSPAA, and the Chilean government. It's all been decided. She used her claws on the hemisphere, but it turned out to be scratch-proof as well. Are you saying I have to leave? This came as both a shock and a relief. On the contrary, you must stay. It solves all problems. I really should have left when I still could. She stared at me, unblinking. I know you touched her. I can smell her on you. I shouldn't have put the scale in my pocket. I should have showered. Now you are spiritually bound to her family and obligated to fulfill the sacred duty of being her keeper. What? I was dumbfounded. There was no denying that I had touched the scale, though. Didn't you say that you don't really believe in traditions? Exactly. She partly closed her inner lids. I don't believe the keeper has to be another Yurii. I don't want to be stuck here. Neither do I. I'm sure she would have smirked if her facial features had allowed her to. It's very convenient that you've already touched her. I was informed that you can't break your contract within the next 3 years unless you want to. Oh, no, I don't. Breaking the contract would cost me big time, thanks to the fine print in Clause 3. Good. I'll leave you some instructions. About what? See it as a promotion. Yuri folded her device back. Sorry, but you can't just dump this on me. Well, we neither want to cause any diplomatic disturbances due to cultural disrespect nor violate work contracts, do we? Clause 6. Dispute resolution. Any disagreements shall be handled through fair and efficient mediation. Mediation shall occur on site, overseen by a CPSPAA-appointed mediator bot, programmed for institutional neutrality. The employee waives all rights to external arbitration, class action participation, or labor tribunal appeals. Disputes exceeding 800 words are considered insubordination. Insubordination will be regarded as a criminal offense. The Yuri transferred some data onto my handheld but didn't answer any of my questions. She just repeated, "Look at the data. It's all there." She left almost as breezily as Jan, saying, "I am sure you will be an adequate keeper. It's a satisfactory solution." Stunned, I sat down on the red plastic tub and stared at all the dull scales curving into one another. A keeper. What did that even mean? Was I some sort of warden or governess? What exactly was I expected to do? Was I just supposed to sit here and guard the scales of a non-deceased Yurii contained within a hemisphere and occasionally entertain her family with veggie broth until my contract ended? I was parched. My skin felt all dry and itchy just looking at the sandstone walls, chapped and chafed as they were. I found a spray bottle, filled it with water, and began moisturizing the walls. It felt urgent at that moment and not any stranger than staring at a pile of alien scales. Wherever the fine mist hit the stone, the dark patch of moisture disappeared immediately, as if the wall were breathing it all in. I refilled the bottle several times until the itch and feeling of urgency eased. I was still thirsty. Greedily, I drank from the tap, but the water tasted somehow too bland, devoid of nutrients. I opened the cupboard, grabbed the veggie broth and the handleless mug, and boiled some water. Then I spooned a large amount of powdered broth into the mug, stirred it, and cooled it down with tap water. When I took a large gulp, the salt hit my palate like a hammer. I spat it right out. The stone floor immediately soaked up the fluid. Feeling a bit wobbly, I leaned on the wall for balance and slid down, my body sluggish and heavy. I was suddenly aware of all the water contained within my skin. When I carefully touched my arms, then my legs, and my face, everything seemed normal, but when I lifted my right arm, I felt the blood inside sloshing down from my palm to my shoulder. The same happened when I lifted my leg. The blood sloshed from my foot to my thigh. Suddenly, I had the sensation that I was leaking, as if the stone around me were tugging at the water within my body. Panicking, I clenched my muscles to hold it in, then carefully scooted a bit to the side to check if I had made a puddle. I hadn't. There wasn't even a damp stain. My body looked normal and still felt solid when I touched it. I slowly relaxed. Giving in to the pull of the stone into the capillary suction felt almost pleasant, letting the stone matrix absorb and rearrange my molecules like that. Rearrange my molecules? I snapped my eyes open. I was still sitting on the wall, not dissolving, my body as solid as before, my molecules stable. The sandstone wasn't as solid as it looked, though. There was space within its granular structure, between its compressed particles. There were layers that had the bitter, flaky note of zinc, the sharp edge of manganese, the bloody taste of iron and copper. An ancient ocean had left behind salty sediments, or was it the broth? As she pulled the broth into the matrix, I finally understood that her thirst had become mine. Pores opening, capillaries drawn nutrients inward, upward, sideways, the fluid permeated silicate veins, eager to rearrange liquefied matter, memories, emotions, all she had been. Transforming everything she was before into something else. Folding and unfolding information, constructing possibilities, all to become more complex, more aware. Much, much vaster than before. The nutrients were craved, needed, welcomed. They fed her transfiguration. The building became her frame, her body, her shell. With each mug of broth that I poured onto the floor, I felt a wave of relief. I kept going until I knew she was sated. Being her keeper, I felt her needs, fed her, assisted her, becoming. I shifted my gaze from the floor to the sandstone walls, glowing dusty gold in the late afternoon light. I felt at peace for the first time in a long while. At home. Maybe the Yuri representative had been right. Maybe this was a satisfactory solution. She was all around me, and in a way I was contained within her, like a crab in a shell. By signing below, the employee affirms complete understanding and irrevocable acceptance of the terms of the employment agreement. CPSPAA Director of Human Resources XXX, Social Work Specialist XXX. What are your thoughts on the story? You can send me an email. I'm kate@clarkesworldmagazine.com. I hope that you enjoyed this one. We have a few more left for you for the month of April. And I do hope you'll come back, should you so choose. Until then, my dear listener, I bid you a very fond and hopefully very temporary farewell.